Well, welcome to the next section. It's great to be back with you again. And we'd like to say a big welcome to everybody who's here in the arena.
Yeah, and we'd also like to say a big hello to everybody who's watching online today. It's great to have you all with us, and we've got a really exciting session ahead for you. It's going to be a special time dedicated to celebrating 40 years of Grapevine and ONE Event.
Fantastic. So, as there's a seat, shall we sit down?
Go in this one.
Now, I cannot believe that it's 40 years since Grapevine and the ONE Event started. Are we actually even old enough to remember all of those?
Well, it sounds a long time, doesn't it, 40 years? I think I can remember a lot of them, but what about you? Have you got some memories?
Yep, some of my favourite memories have been in the big top meetings and also the meetings that are in the Epic Centre just before that as well, gathering with loads of people. And I actually do remember getting into trouble for staying up late too late one night by a steward who said I was making too much noise. But that was fun.
Yeah. And so across the 40 years, there must be some other memories. Obviously, the highlight was the hide and seek. But are there any other memories of anything that you've been involved in 40 years?
Yep, it was a great privilege to be involved in leading in the youth. I don't know if you remember Shake, but Shake was our venue for the 12s to 14s. And I led that along with a great team for a number of years. So that was fun. How about you?
So I think a highlight for me, obviously, working on teams is really exciting when you're at Grapevine and ONE Event because you get to work with some amazing people. And for myself, a highlight for me would have been part of the dance team. So as a teenager, I got to dance in the youth venues and the late night sessions. And then I saw people dancing on the main stage and it really, really inspired me, some amazing people doing that. And so it was great to have the opportunity to work with a brilliant team of dancers from across the country and put together routines to worship on the main stage in the big top, which was a great highlight for me.
Yeah, and my brother-in-law, your husband, was also really heavily involved as well, wasn't he?
Yes, as a family, we've got some great memories from Grapevine and ONE Event. Glenn, my husband, was site director for about 14 years. And so we have lots of memories of being up on the campsite with our children from being babies right through to teenagers, camping in the caravan. And he had a great time with the site team, literally putting everything together to make ONE Event and Grapevine kind of come alive with all of the tents and all the activities and things. And obviously there were some challenges along the way. So we've mentioned weather before. So we would be weather watching for months leading up to the event. And we all remember probably the years when we had lots of wind and you'd see a tent flying through the air, or lots of rain and mud. So lots of challenges came with it, but he really enjoyed that. And we loved as a family being part of kind of working at the event.
Yeah, loads of special memories. We'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce you to a very familiar Grapevine and ONE Event face. Ismael, would you like to come and join us? Let's give Ismael a really big round of applause.
Well, you can sit here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ishmael, it's great to see you. And we're
Thank you
just
very
going to
much.
have a quick word and welcome you back to ONE Event. You're one of my heroes when I was in the kids' venues, and I remember all of the Glory Company sessions that we're involved in, and I had a brilliant time. And I remember those meetings were amazing in terms of, I didn't realise at the time, but learning the Bible and having a great fun time with the team there. So do you have any memories of being here at Grapevine years ago?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm getting old. I can't remember where I am. Grapevine. Yeah, well, I remember. I was talking to your dad, actually, and he reminded me that actually it all started when 40 years ago, Stuart came down to Littlehampton, where I was then, and invited me to come and be part of Grapevine doing the children's work. Well, he had to convince me, and he did. And we were there for nearly all the years of Grapevine doing the children, 8 to 11, I believe. And I have to say, yeah, the things we saw God doing was phenomenal. Things you never forget, the wonderful healings, the miracles, seeing children praying for children, seeing them speaking in tongues, seeing them praising God. And it was a whole new era for children at that time.
It was amazing, and the memories of that still live on. So thank you for that. That was amazing.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I definitely have amazing memories of being in the Glory Company. I'm sure lots of us do. Remembering the actions to the songs, which I absolutely loved. And so we're really excited that you're going to be doing a praise party for us, Ismael, in a little bit. And we just wondered if you could just tell us quickly if you're doing praise parties regularly. Are these something that we can book? But also if you've got anything else coming up in the next few months you'd like to tell us about.
I think the thing is, you see, when you get a calling to do something, you can't do anything else until God tells you to. And I've been called to travel and do praise parties for 50 years now and do celebrations. And I'm totally addicted. I can't stop doing them, and you'll see in a few minutes, I get up here and make a fool of myself and have fun with you. Actually, I just so love doing it. And I really believe it's something God's called me to do. And I still travel, I still tour, I still do it as much as I can. And I don't care where it is or how far I have to go. I'll go anywhere to see people smile, to teach them about Jesus, to teach them scripture, to, all ages, not just adults, obviously.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, we're looking forward to that. So at all ages, we're going to be dancing and singing along with the praise party with Ismael. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll see you in a little bit, everybody. See you in a while. Thank you.
Thanks, Ismael, for joining us. That's fantastic. Well, it's been fun talking about our memories. Becky, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Let's say thank you to Becky. And now as we turn our attention through the age groups, we're going to get an opportunity to think about our young people now, slightly older. I'm going to welcome Carl Belcher onto the stage. Let's give Carl a welcome. And also Nathan Benger as well. Come and join us. Now, it's brilliant to be able to welcome you two on the stage. We've got you both together. Grapevine and the ONE Event's been going for a very, very long time. And Carl, if we start with you, you had involvement with youth in ground level for many years. And I remember years where lots and lots of young people came in to the event from the local area. Can you tell us just a highlight? We could probably choose loads, but when we had buses of people coming in, tell people what happened.
Yeah, so it was, I look back now and I think, what on earth were we thinking of? In that it sounded like a really audacious thing to do. But I think we were really inspired by the work that they've done in Manchester, Festival Manchester, basically empowering young people to go and serve local communities and trying to present the gospel in a really culturally relevant way that young people could understand, especially young people who had nothing to do with church. And some of the places where they were doing that, they weren't necessarily the most affluent communities. And so I remember it was Sim Dendy. It's all his fault. I remember talking to him about this and saying, Sim, what would it be like if we could do the same sort of thing done in Manchester, but do it as part of what was then Grapevine? And so he said, yeah, let's go for it. And we threw together all sorts of ideas, and people like Adi Toyne and Dale Newman and Joe Smith and loads of other people. We were really, really excited, and then suddenly thought, crikey, how are we going to get all the money for this? How are we going to get all the buses for this? And if it wasn't for those people, I think we would have been doomed. And I think the biggest lesson for me is do mission with your mates. Be mates together. And we went into all the different estates in Lincoln, and we spoke to the local neighbourhood development officers and said, what would this community really benefit from? And some of them, they said, actually, do you know what? They just haven't got enough things to do in terms of recreational stuff. So we would help create parks or tidy parks up. We'd go and put inflatable castles, and we'd do a whole load of things. And the council loved it, and they were able to give us some finance. But the thing that I loved was they said, why are you doing this? We said, because we believe Jesus loves those young people, Jesus loves those families, and Jesus loves those communities. We don't want to do anything other than just to respond to God's love. And each evening, as we did this whole stuff, piles of double-decker buses would come in from the estates with these young people who would have the most fantastic experience of the gospel, not just being preached, but demonstrated in love. And we saw so many young people commit their lives to Christ. And even in my own local community, we saw loads of young people surrender their lives to Christ. And we were really keen not just to do a hit and run, but to really signpost them and bring them into a relationship with some really fantastic, dedicated local churches who could then continue that discipleship journey.
That's amazing. And I think the legacy of that is seen before us, because I regularly meet people who tell me that they were part of some of those events and they're serving in church now. So thank you so much, Carl.
No worries.
And then Nathan, you've taken on leadership of youth, and you're a familiar face on the stage and on our screens as well over the last few years in One Event. There are hundreds of things that we could talk about, but do you want to just tell us a little bit about what's happening today for young people?
Yeah, so there's loads of youth activities. Obviously, we've had the youth revival session and we've left a mess. Sorry. Yeah, I've
noticed.
Asked for forgiveness afterwards. But yeah, there's loads of youth activities. There's the fairground, everything going on. And I think it's just a great environment for young people. And I'm really thankful for Stuart and Irene and... just their whole, just mission of not just for one generation, but for generations. And like my story is, I came to One Event, or Grapevine as it was. I served under you, Andy, in Shake.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I found my wife in Shake.
Hey.
She was my prayer partner. And Andy will sort that out if you're single for a fee. And did all of that.
That's brilliant.
But like my life been transformed through youth, and we're believing for a great day today, but also for the future, that many more young lives will be transformed through youth revival and what we're going to do in the future.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And then from here on, so many more exciting plans. So we've got to keep tuned to find out more about those during the months and the years ahead. So let's thank Nathan and Carl, shall we?
Thank you.
And now it is my pleasure to welcome Stuart and Irene, a.k.a. my parents, to the stage. Should we give them a round of applause? Hello there.
You've done a good job, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
You were
I'm going to
well
hand
taught.
over to you now and
Yes.
leave it in your hands.
Thank you. Well, thank you for this opportunity. It's a little bit family-ish, but this has been our lives, really, for 40 years. And obviously, in this last week, we've been reflecting on some of those amazing stories through the years and the challenges, haven't we? But we wouldn't have been able to have done the stuff we've been able to do without teams of great people. And I just want to go on record, firstly, to say a big, big thank you to all those that have been involved, both in the events that we've put on, but also the connecting across the ground level network and other places. And we've had a ground level team that's been operating for 40 years. Some of the original team are in heaven. There have been some changes, but I found it a great joy as I was just walking around this morning to find team members that were with us perhaps 8 or 9 years ago, and they're still with us, though they're not necessarily as connected in terms of team and so on. So it's been a great thing. And for all of you out there that are either in history or now parts of our lives in terms of teams and leaders together and leaders of ground level churches, I just want to say a big, big thank you. And we are really enjoying the journey. 2 people that I'd like to invite onto the platform now are Pete and Kath Atkins, who've been part of that journey for a considerable amount of time. So welcome to Pete and Kath. And Irene's going to do a little bit of a chat and get 1 or 2 stories from you guys with regard to how this journey has gone.
So, we have known each other for quite a few years now, haven't we? Yeah. And had the joy of living in the same village for a while, and you were around the corner, and through difficult times we would walk round to your house in the evening, sit and have a glass of wine and some cheese and crackers, and just like, it was just a really safe place to come.
That was just Stuart and Kath having the crackers and the cheese.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the wine.
I
And
said
celery.
wine because I thought it'd be impressive, but everybody knows I don't like it. So, yeah. So the friendship is there from many years, and so then obviously you were on the ground level team, and now where you live, we can come out and have leadership sessions because you live in this amazing converted barn that helps groups to come and spend time together when COVID is done, of course. But tell us a little bit about how your ministry has developed, because we know of all the different things that you do alongside working with us. And do you want to tell everybody else what you do?
Well, I remember the trouble is with my man, he has lots of good ideas, as you well know. And sometimes, even before breakfast, he's had 5 good ideas. So it's quite tricky to manage those ideas. But one of the ideas was for starting a church planting school to see leadership and the Kingdom of God extended by equipping leaders. And ground level, you guys especially, were brave enough to take up the challenge and one of his good ideas. So he had not such a good idea in terms of the name that he gave this first good idea for training, which was the Humber to the Wash Regional Church Planting School, which actually didn't take off very well in terms of a name, but Ground Level were amazing in letting us sort of experiment on some of our teams and some of the wider teams within the Ground Level network to actually start finding out how to train people better to be able to multiply kingdom things out. So,
because of course we started off, didn't we, with the vision for Humber to the Wash.
Absolutely.
That was our starting point, and then it extended somewhat, didn't it? And then out of that, training and connections and so on, I think in some small way, Pete, we influenced beyond ourselves, didn't we? And I don't want you at this point to be too humble, because you've been the main person behind some of that expansion, but just share a few of those things, Pete.
Well, we were kind of innocently developing a course which by then had sadly lost many of its words and was then called Mission-Shaped Leadership, which was to help people start new things. And it got picked up by a National Anglican and a bit of Methodist thing called Fresh Expressions about 15 years ago. And they basically said, can we have your course, please? And Ground Level kindly said, fine. And then they came to Kath and I and said, can we have you, please? Because no one else knows how to roll it out across the UK. So we then had a bit of an adventure, really, with them. And it was rolled out within an hour of everyone in the UK, but also in South Africa and the US and
So you're
Germany.
quite famous, really, then, aren't you? That's what
No,
you're saying.
no, the course did quite well. I think we stayed as much as we could in the background.
Don't you both think it's exciting, though, that
Yes.
from this little area of rural Lincolnshire, so many places have been impacted and people have taken on some of the things we foundationally started, which is really
great.
wonderful.
I remember the first people we ever trained on our kitchen table in Netherlands.
Around the kitchen table, not on it. No.
Not on it, okay. Around the kitchen table in Netherlands. That guy actually then took the course after being in this country for a while, took it back to South Africa, and then from his training of other people in South Africa, a number of other African nations were trained with something, as you say, that was little and one of his good ideas before breakfast. But God's taken that little tiny thing, just like the loaves and the fishes, and multiplied it 1,000,000 times over. We're really grateful.
Yeah, I think the big thing really that's happened over those 15 years is the way the church across the UK, including the denominations, have really understood the need for pioneering new things, more than ever needed in this day that we're in right now. And so the whole Fresh Expressions thing, I think it's, in some ways, that the use of those words is dying down, but the use of the word pioneer, the language is changing, and the sense of desperately needing people who will start new things, start new communities of faith, whether it's, small things in villages, whether it's larger gatherings in towns, where it's multi-site, whatever it is, just multiply, and pioneer those things is so important right now.
I think it's brilliant to hear all that, because people can, if they don't know, they just see that things might pop up here, there and everywhere, but not realise there actually is a strategy to make these things pop up here, there and everywhere, to get the gospel out into lots of places, especially rural places where, you drive through villages and you can sometimes see 2 or 3 Methodist churches that have closed down, and you just thought years ago that would be incredible, wouldn't it, that they needed 3 buildings, and now they're closed down and they're converted to houses often, but to get the gospel back into rural Lincolnshire as well as other rural parts of the world.
So Ground Level and One Event really have been the shop window of stuff we do behind the scenes. So as we just bring this little chat to a close, perhaps a little bit of an overview of what happens among us, because we really are family and friends together on a journey, aren't we?
Yeah, I think what's really important is the values that underlie all this, and that's what is so much in common between us. I don't know what you folks out there feel, but the world, and certainly the UK right now, needs churches which are founded on the Word and are biblically orthodox, that are full of the Spirit of God and expect God to move immediately now, to be able to hear him, to be able to feel him, for him to move in power, that are primarily relational and releasing of others, although there's a structure underneath to make it work, and are missional. And if the churches are those 4 things, in my very jobbing pastor kind of way of thinking of it, then we won't go far wrong. And in this nation right now, it's desperate that those are the kind of churches that are founded. And they're the values we're on: spirit and word, relationship, the need for mission, the need for unity as far as we can. You know, that's the stuff. And that's what holds us together, isn't it?
Great. Well, thanks so much for being with us and continuing to be with us. So let's thank Pete and Kath, shall we? And we're going to keep moving on. We want to keep this as informative as we can. We've got some more guests. Obviously, with Grapevine and the One Event, worship has been a very important thing. And so I just want to welcome onto the platform Chris to come back, and Howard Williams, and our smallest son, Dave Bell. If the three of them can join us, I thought it'd be great to talk about worship just for a short time. Are you okay, Chris? Good.
Dave won't be happy he was called the smallest son because he's actually taller than you.
Well, everybody's taller than me, love, but yeah, the youngest. Great. Well, great to see you three working together. And the reason I thought it'd be great to put you in these little bucket chairs is to share with everyone. I want to say you have all contributed so wonderfully to the changing landscape of Christian worship for 40 years. There will be people here, because I've had a walk around, there will be people who remember the shifts, dramatic shifts actually, that took place from, you know, your classic 5 hymns on a Sunday, sitting on pews, hymn books, etc. I remember somebody coming to me and saying, you know, overhead projectors will never catch on. And then we had that era, didn't we? Can some of you remember the acetates that got put up, usually upside down? And so worship has transitioned an incredible lot, hasn't it? So I thought, Chris, just a few comments on the roots of that shift, because you, with, I think, a number of other people, we've got one of those pioneers with us today, Graham Kendrick, has been also part of that inspirational shift over the 40 years. Tell us a little about how you began that process 40 years ago, and the contemporary style, etc., that was a bit of a challenge to get through into churches.
Yes, it was. Thank you, first of all, Stuart and Irene, for the honour of being associated and serving this event. Our family has lived this event with you over the years, and it's foundational in our family life. I remember when I was criticised in magazines for being the one that destroyed church hymnology, and of ignoring the richness in hymns and bringing in contemporary music, and not only contemporary music but contemporary musicians. I can remember the shock horror when guitars first walked into church, obviously being carried by somebody. And I also, it was even worse when the drummer came with his drums. And I've got so many stories. I carried a guitar. One of the greatest moments of my life, I carried a guitar once into church because I just wanted to look cool. I was stopped at the door by a little elder, and he looked up at me. He says, "What have you got in that guitar case?" I thought, "I'll be kind to you, sir." I said, "My sandwiches." Because those of us that have had guitar cases will know it's a great place for keeping your sandwiches. He said, "No, you've got a guitar in there, haven't you?" I said, "Well, actually, yes, there is one as well." He said, "You must promise me one thing." I said, "What's that?" "If you play it in church, you mustn't wiggle your hips." Now, I'm not sure who had the biggest problem, him looking at me wiggling my hips or me finding my hips to wiggle. But I said, "Why is that a problem?" He said, "Because Elvis Presley does that." And that was the first and the last time I was ever associated with Elvis Presley. But Stuart will know, because he was a Christian rocker back in the day, and he did
This is true.
He did wiggle his hips, I promise you. But it wasn't a case of getting rid of hymnology. I'm a passionate advocate of the hymns.
It was the Advocates.
Yes, and that was the connection. I'm a passionate supporter of hymnology, the richness and the truth. But just because it's a hymn and it's old doesn't make it good. There's some rubbish hymns, really. I'm not going to have time to tell you which ones they are, in case it's your favourite. But there's some rubbish hymns. And I don't think I ever decided to be a worship writer. It caught me by surprise. And I often say I never wrote the songs, I just caught them. Because the environment, as you'll remember, was such a Holy Spirit, unbelievable atmosphere that songs were falling out of heaven. And I just caught them. And we begin to introduce the instruments as well, to make it a little bit more relevant to each passing generation.
It was actually a very wonderful season, wasn't it? You know, the charismatic move, the gifts of the Holy Spirit were appearing, and we started to see relational, non-religious Christianity in a very real way, didn't we? And but what I honour you for, Chris, in all of this is your ability to bring people through, to train people, to equip people, and to coach people. And so I'd just like to quickly move on to you, Howard. You came on the back of of Chris and with all his gift and talent, but it was quite wonderful, really, in Grapevine, wasn't it? Because Chris always loved orchestra. And we had a couple of significant years, didn't we, when you were beginning to take over the worship and Chris was conducting. Give us a few comments on just that transition period that you remember.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart and Irene. And again, I echo what Chris said. I honour the two of you. The heart of Grapevine, the heart of Ground Level, the heart of One Event has been spirit and word. And we as worship leaders have kind of been in the flow of that. So I honour you two for stewarding that. And I honour Chris as well today for bringing us through. Dave and I stand in the legacy of this man, and we thank God for you, Chris. We thank God for the gift that you are to this network and to the nation and world. And as Stuart said, we had a season in the life of our network where we drew on the rich colour of orchestral sound, believing that there is much more to the tapestry of music that we could draw upon. And we called string players from across the network, we called orchestral woodwind players and brass players, and for a number of years we formed a mini orchestra to support and bring colour to the sound of worship. We also remember, I can't remember the exact year, but had a mass choir from across the network as well. I think 45, 50 people on the platform as well. And I think perhaps one of the things that I try to usher in through that season is drawing the sound from the network, encouraging people from across the network to bring their gifts. But in the midst of all of that as well, we were accompanied by some really gifted, beautiful, spirited worship from across the nations as well. I remember Portuguese brass players joining us. I remember violinists from other nations and other instrumentalists, vocalists as well, that brought kind of a real rich tapestry. And we've seen also kind of the multi-ethnic flavour coming through worship as well, trying to steward some of that in different ways as well. So just a really rich time.
So we're still on that journey, aren't we? But because it was modelled well towards you, you've also been very kind in passing things over to Dave. And that has released you, of course, and you very much alongside us in the Lincoln scene pastorally. And it's great, isn't it, that generations can serve one another and can, you know, this idea of competitive behaviour, there's been none of that. There's been a passing on of things and a joy with that. So just a headline or two from you, Dave, because I think it's in your bloodstream as well, because... You know, watching your podcasts, of course, I need to check them on a regular basis. You've been interviewing, haven't you, worship leaders from the past. You've actually spent time with Chris and Graham and many others. And some of the musicians that are going to be taking part tonight, you've interviewed, you chatted with, and this word honour is big with you, isn't it? And so just a concluding sentence or two, Dave, you've been handed a baton. What a great thing to play today. It's actually warm up here, isn't it? The sun's shining. And the privilege, I guess you feel, Dave, of leading a great band, some great musicians, and alongside of these guys that mentored you and helped you on the way. So a concluding couple of sentences.
Yeah, just a huge honour to be able to do this. I remember being a very small boy in the big top, just looking up at the stage, seeing the likes of Chris Bowater there, and I remember hearing the song Garment of Praise. Can everybody remember that? And I did a cartwheel along the front when that came on because I was so excited. So, and I had this kind of dream. I thought, wouldn't it be great to be able to do that one day? And Chris very kindly asked me to be one of his guitarists on the famous Chris Bowater Christmas tour. And I remember traveling up and down the country with Chris and Howard and playing these Christmas events, which was so exciting, and then had the honour of kind of serving with Howard in Lincoln for a number of years, and just deeply humbled that I get the opportunity to now do this. So thank you both so much.
Great, and perhaps also to give a bit of a plug, I'm not sure that they're actually on site, are they? And that's a bit of a disappointment, but tell us about the album that's coming out from today, and a little bit about what's on it. You know.
Yeah, so available now online for anybody that does listen to music digitally. You can now listen to what we've called a 40th celebration album. And the brief really was to find out from the network and some of our leaders and people that have attended the event for 40 years, what have been some of the biggest songs that have charted the journey from the early 80s right through to present day. So we recorded a live album, and you can get that today, and you can pre-order a copy today as well if you would like it on CD. And so we start right back at the beginning with one of the first recordings, which is one of my favourite songs, not just because you're sat here, but it is Jesus Shall Take the Highest Honour, and we move through to some special moments, Above All Powers, Garment of Praise. We've also got My Glorious and Thank You for Saving Me, some great memories of Martin Smith being here at the event, right through to current day. So we would love for you to share that with your friends, and you can get that right now.
Great, so let's say a big thank you to these guys. They've really carried a ministry through for 40 years. Thank you so much. God bless, guys. Well, Irene, a little bit of nostalgia is not a bad thing, is it? And we're just telling a few stories, and we're not going to go on too long because the future is so important as well, isn't it? But anything out of the last 40 years, apart from having such a loving husband, is there anything that you would like to just share?
Well, we've said it many times. It's been a privilege, hasn't it, that God entrusted something 40 years ago to us, and we did not know it would grow to be like this. So I'm just so excited that all our family are here. You know, you hear so many stories of leaders' children that fall away from the beliefs that they had, and I'm just so thankful to God that we may have done something right in bringing them up, that they didn't feel that they were number 2 in the line to church, and that they've thoroughly enjoyed it. We hopefully had made it enjoyable for them. And so to have all our kids here and the husband, wife, grandchildren here is just incredible, and it's an amazing legacy. And I said it without crying, but that doesn't mean it's going to last.
Yeah, and in a sense, we want to close this little section. I just want to give you an update on where we're heading in the future, but in a minute or two, we're going to have a little indulgent moment. We're going to bring up our kids and our grandkids, and because I believe the promise of the Father is for our children, our children's children, and for all those that are far off. And we need a real move of the Spirit in our land so that, every generation passes on to the next the good things that God has done. So just a little comment about the future. Obviously, it's been a strange season. We've not been able to communicate really well. But just to let people know, in terms of the ground level network, we've already been doing some transitioning. And so Paul Benger, who spoke this morning, he's now overseeing the ground level team. And Irene and I are remaining on the team. But the beauty of this is we feel, you know how these things happen? People say, oh, the Bells have now retired, etc. We haven't retired. We've taken on a shift in ministry. And actually, we feel really good that we're going to be representing ground level beyond the local and connecting with many people for the future. We believe the future is bright. And we're going to be serving and supporting the network as long as we've breath. And so, as you've welcomed us, welcome Paul and Jeannie, and be supportive of all the moves that are taking place. As the day unfolds, we will be sharing with you some of the changes, shifts even for next year. And so the journey continues. But I'd love, because legacy is big with us, isn't it, Irene? I'd love, and it's a bit twee this, but I think I'd love to do it. I'd love to bring our kids and our grandchildren on, because the releasing of us is because we've got such a great family that have endorsed what we're doing. They've taken a measure of sacrifice for it. You know, we've been busy people. But all of them are in the local church with us, which is quite a delight. So perhaps you'd welcome them all on the platform. Be great. That's great. Can you stand at the front here, Dad? Yeah, this is our little flock. And as you can see, we've got a lockdown baby, our latest addition to the family. And so this is it. And we're a pretty cool group of people. And I'm just going to ask Dave to sum up. Oh, Irene wants to say something, and then Dave's going to sing a song.
Again, this is incredible. I couldn't believe Glenn actually was site manager for 14 years, but his first year was the year that the stands collapsed, and he just went, this isn't supposed to happen, is it? And we went, no, but he kept going and kept doing it. And then for Becky to dance, and Sarah danced with her, and for Andrew to do shake, and the kids to love it. I think it's amazing. We got them up here. They weren't too embarrassed to do it, and I'd probably pay them later, but it's brilliant. Thank you.
And of course, this legacy is to do with God's goodness, and so with all these little stories, perhaps you'd stand for this, and we'll just sing a song about God's goodness as we conclude this session.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God all my life. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. Oh, with every breath that I am able, yes, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice, 'cause you have led me through the fire in darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father, known you as my friend. I have lived in the goodness of my God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. Yes, you have, Father. 'Cause all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, 'cause I will sing Your goodness is running after. Sing again, His goodness. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. We believe it, Lord. Your goodness is running after. It's running after. Oh, with my life laid down, surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. 'Cause all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able,